A Brief History of Dogs. Since their emergence over 200,000 years ago, modern humans has established home and community all over the planet. But they didn't do it alone. Whatever corner of the globe you find a Homo sapien in today, you're likely to find another species nearby, Canis lupus familiaris. Whether they're herding, hunting, sledding, or slouching. The sheer variety of domestic dogs is staggering. But what makes the story of man's many friends so surprising is that they all evolved from creatures often seen as one of our oldest livers, Canis lupus or their great wolf. When the Paleo ancestor first settled Eurasia roughly 100,000 years ago, wolf was one of the daily livers at the top of food chain, able to exert over 300-pound pressure on bone-crushing bite and snip out prey more than a mile away. This formidable predator didn't have much competition. Much like human hunter-gatherer, they live and hunt in complex social groups consist of a few nuclear families and use their social skill to cooperatively take down large creatures. Using these group tactics, they operated as effective persistence hunters, relying not on outrunning their prey, but pursuing it to the point of exhaustion. But when pitted against the similar strengths of their invasive new neighbors, wolves found themselves at a crossroad. For most packs, this burgeoning bipeds represents a serious threat to their territory. But for some wolves, especially those without a pet, human camps offer new opportunities. Wolves that show a less aggression toward the humans could come closer and camp as feeding a leftover, and as the more docile scavengers outlast their aggressive predator, their genetic trait will pass on, gradually bringing the terminal rule in areas near human populations. Over time, humans find a multitude of uses for the as wolf. They have to track and hunting prey, and might have deserted as sentinels to guard camp and ward off the approaching enemies. Their similar social structure made it easy to integrate to human families and learn to understand their commands. Eventually, they moved from the fringe of community into our homes, becoming humanity's first domesticated animal. The earliest of these prod dogs or wolf dogs seems to have appeared around 33,000 years ago when wolf-like over cousins. They were primarily distinguished by their smaller size and shorter snout full of the comparatively smaller teeth. But as human culture and occupations became more diverse and specialized, so do our friends. Short stocky dogs to hard livestock by nipping their heels, elongated dogs to flush badgers and foxes out of burrows, then and sleek dogs for racing, and the large muscular dogs for guard duty. With the emergence of kennel clubs and dog shows during England's Victorian era, these dog types were specialized into breeds, with many new ones bred purely for appearance. Sadly, while all dogs breeds are the product of artificial selection, some are healthier than others. Many of these athletic characteristics come with genetic health problems, such as difficulty breathing or being prone to spinal injuries. Humanity's longest experiment to control evolution has the other side of the effect as well. Generation selection for tennis have favored more juvenile and submissive traits they were playing to humans. This phenomenon of selecting trait associated with you is known as neoteny and can be seen in many domestic animals. Thousands of years coevolution may even have bonded us chemically. Not only can canine understand our emotion and body language, but when dogs and humans interact, both our body release oxytocin, a hormone commonly associated with feeling of love and protectiveness. It might be difficult to fathom how every Pomeranian, Chihuahua, and Poodle are descended from fierce wolves. But diversity of breed today is the result of a relationship that precedes cities, agriculture, and even the disappearance of our ancestral cousins. And it's heartening to know that given enough time, even our the most dangerous liver can become our fiercest friend. The history of chocolate. If you can imagine life without chocolate, you're lucky you are born before the 16th century. Until then, chocolate only existed in Mesoamerica in a form quite different from what we know. As far back as 1900 BCE, the people of the region have learned to prepare the beans of the native cacao tree. The earliest records tell us the beans were ground and mixed with cornmeal and chili peppers to create a drink. Not a relaxed cup of hot cocoa, but a bitter, regulating conduction, frothing with foam. And if you thought we make a deal with about chocolate today, the Mesoamerican had us beat. They believed the cacao was heavenly food gifted to human by a feathered serpent god, known to the Maya as Kukulkan and to the Aztecs as Quetzalcoatl. Aztecs used cacao beans as currency and drink chocolate at rural feasts, give to soldiers as a reward for success in battle, and use it ritual. The first transatlantic chocolate encounter occurred in 1519 when Hernán Cortés visited the court of Montezuma as recorded by Cortés Lechunas. The king has 50 jugs of drink brought out and poured into a golden cups. When the colonists returned the shipments of strange new bean, missionaries Celeste's account to native customers gave it reputation as an aphrodisiac. At first, its bitter taste made it stubborn as a medicine for illness like upset stomach. By sweetness, it is the honey, sugar, or vanilla quickly made chocolate a popular delicacy in a space course, and soon no aristocratic home was complete without dedicated chocolateware. The fashionable drink was difficult and time-consuming to produce in a large scale that involved using plantation and important slave labor in the Caribbean and islands off the coast of Africa. The world of chocolate would change forever in 1828 with the introduction of cocoa press by Conrad Van Hout to Amsterdam. Van Houten's invention could separate the cocoa's natural fat or cocoa butter. This left a powder that could be mixed into a drinkable solution or recombined with the cocoa butter to create the solid chocolate we know today. Not long after, a sweet chocolatier named Daniel Peter added powdered milk to the mix, inventing milk chocolate. By the 20th century, chocolate was no longer any elite luxury but has become a treat for the public. Meeting with massive demands required more cultivation of cocoa which can only grow near the equator. Now, instead of African slaves being shipped to South America cocoa plantation, cocoa production itself was shipped to West Africa, with Côte d'Ivoire providing 2/5 of the world's cocoa as of 2015. Yet, along with the growth of industry, there have been the horrific abuses of human rights. Many of the plantations throughout the West Africa which supplied Western companies used slave as child labor, with an estimate of more than 2 million children affected. This is a complex problem that persists despite effort from major chocolate companies to partner with African nations to reduce child and indentured labor practices. Today, chocolate has established itself in the ritual of our modern culture. Due to its colonial association with native cultures, combined with the power of advertising, chocolate retained an aura of something ancestral and decadent and forbidden. Yet knowing more about its fascinating and often cruel history, as well as production today, tells us where the association originates and what they hide. So as you unwrap your next bar of chocolate, take a moment to consider that not everything about chocolate is sweet. One more, the history of chocolate. If you can imagine life without chocolate, you're lucky you were born before the 16th century. Until then, chocolate only existed in Mesoamerica in a form of quite different from what we know. As far back as 1900 BCE, the people of the region have learned to prepare the beans of the native cacao tree. The earliest records tell us the beans were ground and mixed with corn and chili peppers to create a drink. Not a relaxing cup of hot cocoa, but a bitter, vigorating concoction frosting with foam. In a youth, we make the deal we love chocolate today. The major American had a spit. They believed the cacao was heavenly food gifted to human by a feathered serpent god, known to the Maya as Cococan and to the Aztec as Quetzalcoatl. Aztecs used cacao beans as currency during chocolate and gloria feasts, give to the soldier as a reward for success in battle, and use it in ritual. The first translated chocolate encounter occurred in 1519, when Hernán Cortés visited the court of Montezuma at the Natuma. As recorded by Cortés' lieutenant, the king had 50 jugs of drink brought out and poured into the golden cups. When the colonists returned with the shipments of strange new bean, missionaries' salacious accounts to native customers gave it reputation as an aphrodisiac. At first, its bitter taste made it stubborn as a medicine for illness, like upset stomach. But sweetening it with honey, sugar, or vanilla quickly made chocolate a popular delicacy in a Spanish court. And soon, no aristocratic home was complete without dedicated chocolateware. The fashionable drink was difficult and time-consuming to produce on a large scale that involved using plantation and important slave labor in the Caribbean and islands off the coast of Africa. The world of chocolate was changed forever in 1828 with the introduction of cocoa press by Conrad Manhattan of Amsterdam. Manhattan's invention could separate the cocoa's natural fat, or cocoa butter. This left a powder that could be mixed into a drinkable solution or recombined with the cocoa butter to create the solid chocolate we know today. Not long after, a Swiss chocolatier named Daniel Peter added powder to the mix, thus inventing milk chocolate. By the 20th century, chocolate was no longer an elite luxury, but has become a treat for public. Meeting the massive demands required more cultivation of cocoa, which can only grow near the equator. Now, instead of Africa's labor being shipped to South America cocoa plantations, cocoa products instead would ship to West Africa, with providing 2/5 of the world's cocoa as of 2015. Yet, along with the growth of industry, there have been horrific abuses of human rights. Many plantations throughout the West Africa, which supplies Western companies, use slave and child labor, with an estimation over more than 2 million children affected. This is a complex problem that persists despite efforts from major chocolate companies to partner with African nations to reduce child and indentured labor practices. Today, chocolate has established itself in a richer our modern culture. Due to its colonial association with native cultures, combined with the power of advertising, chocolate retained an era of something ancestral, decades, and forbidden. Yet knowing more about its fascinating and often critical history, as well as its protection today, tell us where these associations origin and what they hide. So, as you unwrap your next bar of chocolate, take a moment to consider that not everything about chocolate is sweet.